Okay, guys, hello. I just created a framework in a year and a half of working just by myself without investment and just focusing on it full time. And then I would like to present the results. The approach is to level up, don't repeat yourself approach and convention over configuration. And those approaches really changed how we are making web applications since Rails introduction, and then many other technologies were inspired by Rails. So it was huge impact for everyone. And I was thinking this is still not enough, and we can make another iteration on top of those conventions. And if you would like to know more about me, I have a nice website which is exactly for this purpose, mad.maniac.pro. And then I will skip it because we have only 35 minutes and we should discuss more or less a framework, which is quite a wide subject. So the presentation will be like to make space in your heads for another framework, just to convince you that there is still lots of room for improvement. Then present some parts of the framework, and I will try also to tell some stories and motivate you to participate in the project. So by the way, I have some issues with presenting it on Ruby conferences. So far, I was invited to Africa and I made a presentation there. And I had really great feedback, and actually I could found immediately a pro community in Nairobi. So on the blog of the conference, I read that the presentation I opened the conference with, 2 days conference, was the favorite of the author. So it was 2 days conference, lots of presentations, and really nice names, including the most important names of the Ruby and Rails world. And it was really well received. 2 days I had lots of feedback, and excited developers wanted to use it. So I will start my presentation with the game from my childhood, one of my favorite. And while I was playing it, I always wanted to play with the big guys instead of the one of the 3 main characters. And when I was already not interested in games, I don't know where, but I read it's enough to just change the file name from big guy next file extension into the dwarf, and then we will be playing with a big guy. And as a programmist, I was just mind blown how well it was designed, that the file was an object and you can just rename the file, and then everything works. And then I realized whatever object you see in the game, you can just rename it, and it will be reactively playing the game. Even items, they will react as much as possible for whatever item it is, just by renaming the files. And in 18.9, I guess they had some framework for making games, as they were probably making lots of them. But I really appreciate it. And from the nowadays perspective, I really see that we went far into different direction where everything needs to be configured. But let's move on, and let's see the slide with trade-offs, which means we believe that we should sacrifice something to achieve something else. And sometimes it is like this. But in Ruby, I've seen for many years articles about delegation, and maybe it will be not familiar to you how it is implemented in Ruby, but there is a Ruby method which is called method missing, and it is called at the end of searching for all the names of the method which you try to use. And if it will not hit any of them, then at the end you just call method missing, and then you just handle the methods which were not found. And that's how delegate all is implemented. You just delegate methods to another objects, and if you delegate all of them, so it hits method missing, and then it tries again on another object to call this method. So that's how delegation works. But then you have articles which say, okay, but if you hard code it, it will be much faster. And some people believe that metaprogramming is just slow. And this is one of examples. But in real world, you can just connect two approaches. When you hit first time the method missing, you just then metaprogrammingly you hard code the method, so it works since the first hit. It works exactly the same way as it would work with hard coding everything by hand. So you still have a nice DSL and the same speed of executing the code, but it's a bit one iteration more of thinking about the problem, which I never seen happen. Then one thing which I have lesson which I remember from my childhood. I think I learned a lot when I was a kid. The best time ever. And as you see, there is a game, broken telephone game, which I remember from my kindergarten, and I can tell you that there is a message for developers. Like as much as you will repeat the message at the end, it will be malformed. Even if you try to not malform it on the way, it is a huge change that the input will be, after a few unnecessary passages, it will be different than the output. And that's a good lesson for actually most of the kids, at least in Poland, where I was in the kindergarten. Then I'd like to tell you a story just to rest a bit from the technological things. I have my friend Andrew, which is quite famous in Ruby world. He is evangelist of the domain-driven development, and I was showing him my frameworks, asking him for opinions, and then he replied me with his voice messages, and I was thinking that it would be funny to reply him with a presentation. So let's present also for him right now. What Race introduced, introduced is model view controller for web frameworks. What it exactly means is it is router which points to controller, which uses models to collect data for views, and then when we send it to frontend to even operate more with assets, so-called in Ruby framework, in Rails framework, which will be just JavaScript styles and images. These are assets. So this is like post-processing of what we did already on client side. But I would like you to notice MVC part, which was invented much earlier. Maybe it meant a bit something different. It's hard to say. I think in 70s in Xerox lab. And what is important to notice about it, and it is nowadays it was copied by many different frameworks from many different technologies, the MVC pattern. So it is lesson for everyone that MVC was invented when authors were thinking in a world of personal computers, mostly without a network. So everything was executed locally, and whatever you wanted to execute, you had the rights to execute it. So application was much, much simpler than what we do with MVC pattern, and everything which is more complicated is not handled by the framework. So we have understanding it, we can say that the controller has a dual nature, and one part of it are just crude methods, which are quite generic. New, create, index, show, update, destroy, whatever you call it in your framework. These are just standard operations on the collection. And then you have your custom methods, which are not generic. And some people will just not call it a controller, they start calling it a service. This is just a custom logic. But originally in Rails, it is just name a controller, all of this. So for example, by putting more method into one controller, more services into one controller, it becomes unclear because one method can require some additional libraries which you include, and then you have multiple services in one controller, and all of them have different dependencies. So after all, when you open the file, you don't know where you can find which part of logic. And this problem doesn't exist when you have just one service for one method, and whatever you need for that is really clearly visible what the service is using. Another thing is just making by hand semi-manually those generic CRUD methods. And they need lots of functionality which I never seen in my life, all implemented properly. And every project tries to solve it on its own. Some things they will solve well, and some things they will not solve at all. So it is really well to recognize that collection is a separate thing and implement it properly for everyone. One thing which I noticed already more than 10 years ago is like we don't need a router, because I remember times when we were not using router. Let's say from the example from the game, which is not internet example, but files were enough abstraction. And at the beginning, when I was called a webmaster at the late 90s, I was using just FTP, and I was posting index HTML files in a proper place, in a proper directory, and it was creating beautiful links for your website when you design it properly. And the same way when I was starting with PHP many years ago, let's say more than 20 years ago, it was the same. I was just putting index.php in a proper place, and I didn't need router. So a router was just to make easier to create beautiful URLs when we were using custom user input. But we can solve it another way. And if you will have time, I will show you how ProRouter is solving it. And it is really advanced one router because it is handling in a simple way. It has its own syntax. It is solving all kinds of routing, not only one. It's all the slash hash slash and the classic URL variables. It contains 3 routers in one, and you can just use whatever you choose from them at once. And often there is a use case for that, and you have freedom to use it instead of choosing one of them or just hacking the second one, not calling it a router then. So I have a joke here, which I will not use it because I have no time. I have an Easter egg for Rails developers. So the approach here is to rethink each layer, because I see like the router has huge, it's really small part and it has so much room for improvement. And then I thought there is much more things which we could improve. So as we see by icon, this is pro-only feature distributions, and it's a really simple thing. I provide origin for everyone, and then you can clone it. This is just git clone, and you start your project with proper git clone command. Then you can improve the framework by yourself, and as you will see later, framework is really condensed. It's not like you will need to be omnibus and know so much things, because it's really not much code to read. So you will be able to grasp your part you would like to improve. For example, speed. Let's say you would like to focus no matter what on speed, and you will make your distribution, which will be the super fast version with, let's say, some trade-offs, or it will be just better than the origin. And then you have organization. Your company would creates lots of projects, and then you realize in every project you do first step always the same. So you just you can clone any of those, let's say specialized one or the origin, and create your organization version of the framework. And then you can even make a association of companies which believe that they have, all of them have good practices, and you can review new versions from origin together. You can make changes in that, or you can make you can just have your own group which will say, okay, we just upgrade to this version of the framework together, and we together verify that everything is stable, because always whatever technology you use, you are responsible for stability of your project, and you should make such checks, not just merge the update. And then even as a personal developer, as a private one, you do always this, you have some habits and you can make your own distribution. And if you will distribute it further, or you will keep it private, it's just your choice. So another icon says this is recursive idea, and most of ideas in Pro are recursive, which means you can combine them together in whatever configuration you like Lego blocks. And I don't need to even forecast how you will use it. It's just recursive compatible. You can combine all of these approaches the way you will figure it out. So we have another approach, recursive structure in Pro. There is a flat structure like Rails and many things when you just sort things by model, controller, views, and you put it in a flat one directory. And here is recursive approach, which probably some other technologies are using, maybe not in such extent. So you just, like in the game, first of all, your URL will be reflecting the place in your code. So it will be always very easy to find it. The directory is a polyglot component. You can move it wherever you want and it will work in your place. You can move it from one project to another. You can move from one place to another, and it will just find itself in a new context. Inside you have tests, you have assets, you have your code, you have the models and collections, and when you don't need some feature, you just delete the directory which represents the feature, and it's gone. You don't need to traverse your whole flat structure of your application to get rid of it, and then leave some leftovers till forever. So the flat approach, I would say, it can be elegant, and it's like a pleasure when you sort books by size instead of by something more meaningful. I would like to say also that yes, there is the file as an object concept, which I mentioned in the game, and more powerful polyglot component as a directory. And inside those directories, you have recursively the same structured directories. So no matter how deep you will go, you will feel familiar. And on the top level of your structure, you will define the subdomain of your project and even your project. So how this application works, I have the directory maniac.pro, which represents my project, and inside first level of directories, I have slides, and Pro recognize that we will have slides subdomain here, and it works. So that's the convention, and you don't configure anything else. So we have router here. It's only in Pro. I already mentioned some things about it. So to be quick, I will just tell that there is a syntax for it. So we just use a routing variable. The question mark is just like the original URL standard. You start with question mark, and then you say there is a value for ID is 5. And then if you would like to use this value, just use question mark ID, and it works. And models. So it is SQL based. It will not tell you anything if you're not Ruby developer. You don't write migrations as far as you didn't deploy your minimal valuable project. So there is a really huge part of job. The most important part of your project, you just don't care about migrations. You just define models, and they define automatically database shape. Then usually validations are in 3 places instead of 1. Here in model, we can, this is just a part of model definition. There is also another part where you define properties, which are just columns in your database. And here you have a really readable way to define also all the validations you need. And it will work on the backend and on the front end, and in the database also. It will add proper constraints if needed. If that's your wish to have the double constraints to validate on the backend and in database, it will do it. If you choose another way, it will also be another way. And also these validations, whatever is possible to move automatically to front end, it is already on the front end, and you don't define it never again. Also, there is in model, you can define custom types. This is the custom type, which has totally the same syntax as model. I said there is a prop method, which creates the columns and all details about columns, what type of it is, and so on. So you have a special domain specific language, which allows you to extend your database, whatever the SQL database so far possible is on beneath. You can extend it unlimitedly with a nice language, which no other framework has such feature. And whatever you do, you have fallback to really proven technology. It's not like I force you to use only the convention syntax. You can always fall back to what you know. If you don't know how to make it with syntax, or you find out that this syntax doesn't allow for something because I didn't thought about something, you always have fallback to make it the traditional way. And then you have simplified relations. As you see, only one method is enough to define all kinds of relations. And I will not explain it now because there is not much time. And then I would like to show that the type allows you easily to extend, is reusable between projects and models, and you can extend your database capabilities. Let's say here we define what is a timestamp. So when created at when there is no value, we say time now, and there is a value time now. And where updated at, we always update with time now. So it is few lines of code, and if you will go to SQL's implementation of it, it's like 109 lines of code. And if you will go to Ray's implementation of this part, it will be like 177 lines of code, and everything in Pro is like this. It is really short implementation, and it allows you to write also shortly code. So when I was saying that MVC is not enough, let's see what we can achieve just by implementing a collection abstraction. So we just define a scope of the collection. So every CRUD method is aligned to this scope. All of CRUD actions can be written well between the projects. It is really a generic thing. We don't need to re-implement it in every project and in every call also. For collection, we can have DSL for custom actions, which I will not tell about right now. Data batching, it is also really easy to solve once forever. Pagination and streaming implemented efficiently. So you always, on every collection, you just, by default, you take just a part of it. And then whenever the client wants, can just ask for more, for next and previous values. Caching, also the thing which is just once for all. You don't need to touch it, but you touch it because your framework doesn't provide it. Query optimization. So many times I saw inefficient queries which can be generally improved, and collection does it. Managing indexes. The collection DSL gives you enough information to give algorithms enough information to try to optimize your database. Data permissions. This is the thing which I really saw in my life, so terrible solutions which are so expensive in calculations before giving an answer if you can touch this piece of data or not. And it is solved properly in Pro, and it is also efficiently calculated with no overhead. Real-time data, also another thing which I see people connecting cables by hand in most of technologies. It is solved here properly also. When you define your collection, it is live by default. And then automatically from collection, there is a generated JavaScript object which will be on front end, and it is designed for handling the API beneath. You don't touch API calls. You don't think what is the address of this API endpoint, because the collection knows where it is, and you just use methods like load and next and preview and so on, and add maybe something to collection and delete something from this collection. And you don't need to think about making API or consuming API. And still inside it is implemented much better than you ever saw in practice, making JSONs often. It is so huge subject. I will skip it to fit in the time. And then also it is possible, like in a first version of Rails, they proposed a scaffold which automatically was creating interface on top of the model. So the one thing is different here. We don't have the model, we have the collection, and collection really precisely defines what you can do with permissions, what actions you can call on this method with CRUD, and basically it generates accurately the interface. If you don't care about the look of the interface, it will generate it automatically, so you'll never touch the front end to generate, for example, some piece of internal panel administration. So we have nice solutions like this in Django, but it is not till it doesn't have collection, so it can't be as good as it is, because it will still require some custom tweaking, and here there is no need for additional work. So we have service, which is comparable to controller. When we should think about service, it will be the controller we know from other technologies, more or less. One service, one endpoint, it is a foundation element. So I use it internally, and you using collections and items, which is special case of collection, may never need to touch it. But it is always there, so you can use it, and it's really simple to use. As you see, it's just a block of a service, and inside you have perform method, which does whatever you want, based on params you passed from the client. So let's say Rails can reply only once, and then it's over of your controller work. Here you can answer your client as many times you want, so you can give some piece of information quickly, the answer, and other pieces you can calculate and stream it as long as you process it. You can broadcast for every client from this service. You can you have permissions integrated the same as in collection. Everything is a background job. So background job in Rails is a thing which you calculate in a separate queue out of the main server to not block it. So everything here is not blocking. So for Rails people, it would sound like everything is a background job. So you don't need to care that you will block your server. If you need to take some action, you can immediately make it in your server or collection, and don't make all dance to move it to another processing unit. And it's easy to test because we always have perform method and payload. So payload is easily modifiable, and therefore you can always easily test. So when I was talking with Andrew, he said a few interesting things. So he said that I made it according to my own feelings and my own philosophy, and it will be very hard to promote, and it will require to change people's habits. And he mentioned that Rails, when appeared, it promised 10 times more productivity according to PHP or Java. So people even changed languages they used, like myself. So this is message for you. I hope I will provide you so interesting technology that you will not care about your current programming language. You will just want to use it. And what I can promise is there is 10 times less code to write with Pro than with other modern frameworks, including Rails. And Rails is usually quite condensed. So this is 10 times less than Rails. And also I was comparing other things, and it was always at least 10 times less. So coding is not only about writing, but it's also reading. So when the project is so huge, at some point it becomes unmaintainable, and people are worried to touch anything. And at this time, it even speeds up to have more code and more code, because it's easier to copy, it's easier to not delete, so to not broke something we don't see it is related to, and then it starts even faster to get more lines of code than Pro. Pro is really condensed. When you divide your project lines of code by 10, you realize how much simpler it would be to maintain it after such conversion. So with Rails, we have generators, and with Pro, everything you just write by your hand, because there is not much to write. And when you generate something, you have so much code which is already dead. When you change your concept in Pro, you change it in one place, in one line, and it affects whole application whenever the concept was used. And when you have generated code for it is already generated. It's not dynamically convertible. You just need to rewrite it in many places because you generated it from one template. So what I already said, that meta changes impact whole application, no matter how the application is. And I would like you to see also the declarative approach of SQL, which was also provided somewhere in 70s, I guess, the language, and we can write what was written in 70s in our modern fast SQL databases. So this is great example that if we will provide the proper language, not the most beautiful, but the proper, which forecasts lots of use cases, and it's complete enough, you will use this language so many years later, but more efficiently, because you will have newer and more efficient engine to run it on. And Pro is open for all these improvements to be even more efficient with every year, but your code will not be changed, because it is built around a concept of collection, and collection has relations. Collection is wrapped around model, and model has the same relations. So whatever relation has model, collection can use this relation. And model is built on top of props. So in database, these are columns. In your code, these are properties. And each of these properties can be a custom property, which is built of custom types. And recursively inside, unlimitedly, you can repeat this concept of custom type. So custom type can use another custom type, and so on. Obviously, it will be not much such cases, but this is just the showing of how powerful the recursive approach is, and how flexible and not stopping you from creating it is. So after all, I built it around the concept that project is a collection of applications, and application is a collection of collections. An item is a special case of a collection. One more thing to say, I don't see time, so I keep speaking. Plugins concept, only in Pro, this I should call it plug outs. One more time concept that the directory and file is an important thing in your project. You have your directory which contains the framework, and if you will mirror this structure in plugins directory, you can plug out any file you want and modify it customly. If you need something to behave differently, some new functionality which I didn't provide it, and you don't want to create a distribution yet, you can quickly apply a plugin in the directory in the proper place, and this file will be loaded instead of original one, and this way you are able to tweak anything. It's not like there is no limit. Whatever you want, you will just quickly change. So this is a tweaking tool, useful for distributions with small changes. You can use it to propose changes to the framework. You can apply it quickly and provide someone to see it, how it works. And you have no limits if the framework is not limiting you in any way. So you think it's maybe it's ridiculous to touch the framework, But when you realize that this is only 4,500 lines of code, this is a totally different perspective. It is really approachable for you to read it and to modify it. And comparing to Race, it's less than 1% of lines of code, and much less than characters, surely. So performance, which can be, and I consider it is an important thing, it is also a huge benefit of using Pro, because whatever framework you use, if it's Django or whatever, it is tightly coupled to your HTTP server, and Pro is not. Pro will use the fastest known HTTP server, not bothering to bind some other technology inside Ruby. No, it will be not inside Ruby. It will be, probably it will be some C server, which will be the fastest. And currently it's just Bounce server, which is considered quite fast, just for ease of implementation for myself, but it will be improved. Then I'm not a Ruby fanboy. I know it's not the fastest language existing, so I just minimize time spent in Ruby. You will write your code using nice DSLs, but anything else will be not handled by Ruby. You don't see it, you don't touch it, so you shouldn't care that it's not Ruby or your favorite technology. Whatever developer don't touch should be made in the fastest possible manner, and this is like this in Pro. And then everything is organized in unidirectional pipeline of agnostic elements. So each component which makes this responsive, remotely responsive framework from the perspective of the browser, it consists of some elements, few or couple of elements, but all of these elements, they are quite small and really easy to exchange for another, because they are agnostic. They don't care what is before or after of this component. Let's say the HTTP server or the WebSocket server, they don't care about the surrounding, where are they run. So it's easy always to exchange it for the faster one. And those elements are independently scalable, and because it's just unidirectional pipeline, it scales very well. It always creates a tree, which is really efficient as a structure for scaling. So even if it's a high-level language, it really aims for the top performance. And yeah, I still don't know what's the time, so I keep speaking, or maybe I should check the time.
It's about time we wrap.
What time it is?
A couple of minutes. We've already converted covered about 40 minutes, so perhaps you can try to wrap it up.
5 minutes, right?
Yeah, you can take like 2-3 minutes more. Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, so transport layer is also important, but I will not speak about it. So what's between front-end and back-end? It is really improved also in Pro. So here also you have just by the structure of the framework, you have really clear division of responsibilities. What is let's say for mechanics, I am the mechanic, and other people modifying the framework behavior are mechanics. But the ones which are creating the product, they use those DSLs and those tools. They are pilots. They don't care. The mechanics are for performance and for make things possible, and pilots are just to build the product. And it's really clear division inside this framework. So always it will be easy for you to make, for example, a code review, the appropriate code review, if something is critical or not. So wrapping up, I'm just looking for early adopters and supporters. For the framework documentation, you can find here. Thank you.